of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Cliff, what do you make of this, the significance of it?
Well, it's kind of extraordinary. It's very rare that a UN official will implicate a sitting head of state in war crimes. It's something that rarely happens. And when they get even close to it, they simply say at high levels. But in this case, she has made it clear that she is talking about none less than Bashar al-Assad, who is the head of the Syrian state. That is something rather extraordinary, and what it suggests is that what she has seen, the evidence she has seen, is overwhelming and points to egregious war crimes that she feels she cannot simply cover up in any way.
What's this going to mean now for the situation in Syria?
Well, it does complicate it because Assad has been essentially making a comeback in the sense that there was a time not that long ago when the U.S. and other Western governments had the belief, the conviction that Assad was going to fall sooner or later, probably sooner. That's no longer the case, in part because he used chemical weapons, and the settlement over the chemical weapons has actually strengthened Assad rather than weakened him. It's ironic, to say the least, but because the U.S. and other Western nations are dealing with him, and he's promised to give up the chemical weapons and the chemical weapons manufacturing facilities, the result is that they are now dealing with him as a head of state, not expecting him to fall. And he is not in a weakened position at this moment vis-a-vis the various opposition forces, mostly in the east of the country.
The skeptic in me, Cliff, when I heard this, thought immediately, so now if you are Assad, why negotiate? Why possibly give up power if you could find yourself charged with war crimes?
Well, I think the skeptic in you is quite correct. Assad has always said, I will negotiate, but not to give up power. I will negotiate some kind of settlement to the conflict underway, but my stepping down is not one of the options that I am putting on the table. If you want to talk to me, come talk to me, but I intend to remain in power. This is one more reason for him not to leave power. I'm not sure that he ever gets prosecuted in any real sense for this. I think it is important if the so-called international community understands that we are talking about a serious war criminal when we talk about Assad. And by the way, stopping him from using chemical weapons again against his own people has essentially given him license to use any other means he chooses to slaughter people, which he has been doing. And we're probably well past 100,000 victims at this point. I think it's likely that we're closer to 125,000.
This investigation, I'm curious how accurate you think it is, given the chaos in Syria, the violence in Syria. I mean, this investigation being done in the midst of a civil war.
Absolutely right, and that does complicate it. I would think that if there was not evidence that was fairly conclusive, you would not have this kind of announcement coming out of the UN. The UN is hardly an organization that is forward-leaning or irresponsible about such things when it comes to a nation like Syria or a regime like Assad's, which we should remember is fully backed and supported on the ground with troops as well as with money by the Iranian regime. Assad is also supported, of course, by Vladimir Putin of Russia. So I think it's unusual for the UN to do this, and I think it suggests that there is overwhelming and very compelling evidence. Otherwise, they would not be.
Just before we go, also important to mention that the opposition forces have also been implicated in this as being guilty of crimes.
And I'm sure that's right as well. As I'm sure you know, the opposition forces at this point, it wasn't the case when the demonstrations began against Assad, but at this point, the opposition forces are probably dominated by al-Qaeda-linked groups who do not obey any international laws at all, do not obey the laws of war whatsoever. So I believe it is happening on both sides. This is an awful situation that has spun out of control. And it is not a credit to the U.S. or others that we have let it get this far. I'm not saying we should necessarily have or should be now intervening, certainly not with boots on the ground, but I don't think it needed to get to where it is now. Had we supported the more secular, the more nationalist elements in the opposition to Assad, instead of leaving a power vacuum that al-Qaeda has filled on one side and Iran and Hezbollah which is Iran's foreign legion based in Lebanon essentially, has filled on the other side. Now you have a real terrible situation in Syria. Not clear how this gets settled or when.
Clifford May is the president of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. He's coming to us from Washington. Great to talk to you, Clifford, as always.
Thank you, Todd.